I mean, he had Tom bloodied up, and you know, Tom didn't want to continue in the fight.
Look, I might look like an idiot. Sometimes I might even talk like an idiot, but when it comes to fighting, I know what I'm talking about.
Tom Aspinall's conflict with the UFC didn't begin with Cyril Gane's brutal double eye poke, but that specific moment made the situation permanent. Following months of friction regarding matchmaking and management, Aspinall has already started making quiet moves toward the PFL, and the step he just took might essentially confirm it all. Let's get into the details. Before we plunge deep into the rabbit hole regarding what is happening behind the curtain, before we unpack the layers of controversy, betrayal, and frustration leading to this pivotal moment, we must return to where this saga truly started. We need to discuss what occurred on October 25th, 2025, inside the Etihad Arena in Abu Dhabi, at an event intended to cement Tom Aspinall's legacy as one of the greatest heavyweight champions the UFC has ever produced. UFC 3021 was billed as a clash of philosophies, the explosive wrestling and devastating ground game of Tom Aspinall versus the elite kickboxing and masterful footwork of Cyril Gane. This was Aspinall's first defense of his undisputed heavyweight title, a belt he worked his entire professional career to obtain, and the stakes couldn't have been higher for both athletes inside that octagon. The bout began exactly as most experts had predicted. The opening minutes were fierce, with Gane landing clean strikes that bloodied Aspinall's nose, while Aspinall pressed forward with signature takedown attempts, looking to drag the French striker into deep grappling waters where he knew he held the edge. The energy in the arena was electric, with fans on the edge of their seats, aware they were witnessing a fight that could shift direction at any second. However, precisely at the 4-minute and 35-second mark of the opening round, something happened that would alter the trajectory of Tom Aspinall's career forever. In a close-quarters exchange, Gane's extended fingers poked Aspinall in both eyes, an accidental yet absolutely devastating illegal foul under UFC rules. Aspinall immediately signaled distress, covering his face and stating to referee Jason Herzog that he simply could not see. What happened next shocked the entire mixed martial arts community. After a pause for medical checks, the referee declared the fight a no contest, as Aspinall was deemed unable to safely continue. And just like that, folks, what was meant to be Tom Aspinall's crowning moment turned into one of the most controversial events in recent UFC heavyweight history. Now you might be thinking, okay, it was an accidental foul. These things happen in MMA. What is the big deal? Well, let me explain exactly what the big deal is, because the fallout from this single incident has been nothing short of catastrophic for the relationship between Tom Aspinall and the UFC brass. In the immediate aftermath, Aspinall faced heavy criticism from parts of the MMA community. Social media erupted with accusations that he exaggerated the injury, that he lacked the warrior spirit to push through adversity, with countless fans drawing comparisons to past fights where competitors continued despite similar fouls. The criticism was relentless, brutal, and deeply personal. But here is where things took a turn nobody anticipated. Here is where the real...
And he had Tom bloodied up, and you know, Tom didn't want to continue in the fight.
Those exact words, folks. Those words right there from Dana White himself. Tom didn't want to continue. Not Tom couldn't continue. Not Tom was medically unable to continue. No, Tom didn't want to continue. Do you grasp the implications of what the UFC president was suggesting about his own heavyweight champion? Dana White contributed to this narrative during the post-fight press conference, stating only Tom knows what happened, implying the decision to stop might reflect Aspinall's unwillingness rather than necessity. White later elaborated in interviews, saying, "As far as we know, he doesn't have a detached retina. There's no damage to the eye, based on what he claimed were preliminary ringside assessments." These comments from the most powerful man in MMA poured gasoline on an already raging fire. Some fans began labeling Aspinall a quitter, or suggesting he used the foul as an excuse because Gane had gained early momentum. The narrative was being shaped in real time, and it was not being shaped in Tom Aspinall's favor at all. But what nobody knew then, what the world was about to discover in the weeks that followed, was that Tom Aspinall's injury was far more severe than anyone, including Dana White, had publicly admitted. And when the truth finally emerged, it would expose a rift between the UFC's heavyweight champion and the organization that may never be mended. The controversy mostly subsided in the weeks after the event as attention shifted to other. But then, around November 30th, 2025, Aspinall broke his silence with a doctor's report and public statements that would vindicate everything he had said from the start. The medical documentation shared via social media and interviews detailed bilateral ocular trauma from the eye poke, including orbital soft tissue swelling, a minimal fracture of the right medial orbital wall, and persistent double vision that refused to clear. But that wasn't even the most alarming part of the diagnosis. Aspinall was diagnosed with Brown syndrome, a rare motility disorder where the superior oblique tendon sheath restricts upward eye movement, potentially caused by inflammation or trauma. This is not a minor inconvenience.
Well, listen, I didn't continue. I'll tell you why I didn't continue. Because I'm not a f***ing dummy. Like, I'm not going to go out there and fight one of the best strikers in the world if I can't see.
With double vision.
With any eye. Look.
Let that sink in for a moment. If Dana White had simply come out and supported his champion, if he had acknowledged the severity of the injury and defended Aspinall's decision to protect his health, the narrative would have shifted. Fans would have taken cues from the boss, but instead, Dana chose a path that left his champion hanging out to dry. Have you spoken to him since? No. The UFC...
What's been going on in your exciting life for the last 5 weeks?
Oh, mate, I've been having a lovely time just in and out of hospital, getting all kinds of different tests done on my eyes and speaking to specialists, speaking to surgeons, speaking to doctors.
The man holding the most prestigious title in the most prominent division of the biggest MMA organization on the planet has never had a real relationship with the president. He's never had a meaningful conversation beyond saying hello. And after suffering a career-threatening injury in a pay-per-view main event, Dana White didn't pick up the phone. He didn't send a text. He didn't even slide into his DMs to check on it. Aspinall voiced frustration over the lack of direct communication from White, noting that while UFC executive Hunter Campbell offered support, White provided public updates claiming no damage to the eye without ever consulting him directly. This is the man who took fights on 2 weeks' notice. This is the man who served as a backup for Jones versus Miocic. This is the man who sat on the sidelines for 15 months waiting for a title shot, while the UFC prioritized other matchups. And this is how he is treated by the organization he sacrificed so much for. But the dysfunction goes deeper than the eye poke incident. You see, Tom Aspinall's frustrations have been building for years. His path to the title involved an interim belt win in 2023, followed by unification after John Jones.
Very disappointed.
If he would have come up and said, poked in the eye, illegal, couldn't see, couldn't continue, serious injury, etc., people would have laid off. They would have taken cues from him.
It definitely didn't help the cause. Definitely didn't.
But the long layoffs, often 12 to 14 months between fights, fueled debates about his inactivity and the UFC's commitment to promoting him as a star. And here is where things get interesting. Here is where we see the financial motivations that might be driving Tom Aspinall toward the exit door and away from the UFC forever. In October 2025...
Have you spoken to him since?
No.
Is that disappointing?
I've spoken to the UFC since, but I've not spoken to... Me and Dana don't really speak like that anyway, so...
Ever?
No. Ever.
Designed to send a clear message to the UFC brass about the Aspinall camp's intentions. Boxing for sure. More money. Why not? If you get into the top percentage of that sport, the UFC don't pay anywhere near as much as boxing does. The comparison everyone in the MMA world keeps making is to Francis Ngannou's trajectory. Remember, Ngannou's last UFC fight paid him rough, but his boxing debut against Tyson Fury netted him around $10 million.
Has he sent you a text or DM in the aftermath? Hope you're feeling better.
No, nothing like that. Nothing like that. He actually, like I said, he started giving updates that there was nothing wrong with my eye when that isn't the case.
But financial concerns aren't the only thing pushing Aspinall away. There is also the matter of his close friendship with Ante Delija, the former PFL heavyweight champion, who signed with the UFC in June. This friendship has created one of the most unusual situations in recent UFC history that has Dana White fuming. Aspinall has publicly declared he would vacate his title rather than face Delija. On the Shaychek's TSN Gigs podcast in October 2025, Aspinall explained his reasoning. If I'd never won a title, we would have to fight because that's my dream. But now I've done it, I'd be like, I'll vacate it and he can have his time. I wouldn't fight him, that's my gut. Dana White's reaction was characteristically blunt. I hate that. To even think about vacating it, because you don't want to compete against somebody is absolutely insane. Do you see the pattern emerging? Do you see how every interaction between Aspinall and UFC leadership creates more friction, more tension, more reasons for the champion to look elsewhere? The relationship is deteriorating right before our eye. When Dana White finally addressed the growing tension at the UFC 323 press conference on December 7, 2025, he attempted to walk back some earlier comments, attributing the situation to a misunderstanding and insisting, Never once did I say anything negative about him or in a derogatory way. He clarified his earlier remarks were based on initial reports and affirmed the UFC's involvement in Aspinall's care. But for Tom Aspinall, the damage may already be done. The trust has been broken beyond repair. The relationship has been irreparably damaged by weeks of public criticism and private neglect. And now with just 2 to 3 fights remaining on his contract, the heavyweight champion is actively looking at all options for the future. The PFL connection, and what comes next. Now we arrive at the most explosive part of this story. Now we need to talk about what is really happening behind the scenes, and why the title of this video isn't clickbait. It is the reality of the situation Tom Aspinall finds himself in. You see, while Tom Aspinall remains the UFC heavyweight champion as of December 9th, 2025, with no confirmed departure officially announced, the writing is on the wall for anyone paying attention. The question is no longer if Tom Aspinall will leave the UFC. The question is when and where he will go. Aspinall's connection to the Professional Fighters League is primarily through his long-standing friendship and training partnership with Ante Delisha, the 2022 PFL heavyweight champion. Delisha won the PFL tournament with TKOs over Matthias Scheffel and Renan Ferreira, plus a decision over Shelton Graves, earning the $1 million prize as the first Croatian PFL champion. Their bond stems from years as training partners at Aspinall BJJ in the UK, where they have pushed each other to become better fighters. Now some of you might say, wait, that doesn't mean Aspinall is going to the PFL. And you're right, it doesn't guarantee anything concrete. But consider the context. Consider the broken relationship with Dana White. Consider the massive financial incentives of boxing. Consider that Aspinall has explicitly stated he would refuse to fight Delisha, even if it meant vacating his title. Delisha has reciprocated this sentiment publicly, stating he would also refuse to fight Aspinall for the belt.
So you're not too happy then on what the president of the organisation is saying towards it?
Well, what do you think?
Tom didn't want to continue in the fight, so.
Look, we all know who is at fault here. What the are you talking about, huh?
And off the back of that, Tom, what have the UFC said?
Hunter Campbell, who I deal with personally, he's just said if they can help out in any way with doctors and stuff like that, that's what they'll do.
Notice how carefully Aspinall chose his words. He didn't say he was committed to the UFC long term. He didn't express excitement about future fights. He simply said they need to focus on his health and cross that bridge when he's feeling better. That isn't the language of a champion fully invested in his promotion's future. That is the language of someone keeping his options wide open. The broader implications raise questions about fighter autonomy, divisional dynamics, and the balance between personal relationships and professional obligations. With Delisha's ranking and Aspinall's status, a matchup could theoretically arise if both keep winning, but Aspinall has made it clear he will never let that happen. So where does this leave us? What is the most likely path for Tom Aspinall? Analysts and insiders are predicting Aspinall may exit the UFC after his current contract expires to pursue boxing, where the earning potential is exponentially higher than anything the UFC can offer. His father has been openly campaigning for this path, and Aspinall has done nothing to shut down the speculation. But there is another possibility nobody is talking about openly: the PFL as a potential landing spot. The PFL has been aggressively signing former UFC champions and high-profile fighters, positioning themselves as a legitimate alternative. And with Aspinall's close ties to Delisha, his frustrations with UFC management, and his desire to maximize earnings during his prime, a move to the PFL isn't as far-fetched as it might seem. Consider this important factor. Tom Aspinall is 32 years old, meaning he has a limited window to capitalize on his physical prime. Every month he spends dealing with injuries, contract disputes, and promotional drama is a month he is not making the money he deserves for putting his health on the line. That frustration, that disappointment, that sense of being let down by the organization he has given so much to, is palpable in every word. You can see it in his demeanor. This isn't a happy champion celebrating success. This is a man who feels disrespected, undervalued, and ready to explore other options. As of right now, Aspinall's career implications are uncertain, but not dire. He has time to recover, and Dana White's comments suggest he still has protected status as champion. A rematch with Gane is likely planned for early 2026, potentially headlining a UK event. But make no mistake, the clock is ticking on Tom Aspinall's UFC tenure. With only 2 to 3
And obviously you've been a massive help to the UFC. You've taken a fight on 2 weeks' notice. You've taken a fight in the middle of the night, been backup fighter for Jones versus Miocic, and then obviously the whole John Jones saga. How do you sort of see this going forward for yourself with the UFC?
I think right now we just got to focus on the health, innit? We just got to get everything back to normal, follow the doctor's orders, and that's all I can control right now. So we'll cross that bridge when I'm feeling better and everything's right.
And with every indication that his camp has no intention of re-signing, we are watching the final chapter of Aspinall's UFC career unfold. Whether he ends up in boxing making millions, in the PFL reuniting with his close friend Delija, or in some other venture entirely, one thing is crystal clear. Tom Aspinall is done being disrespected by the organization he gave everything to. He's done being undervalued while risking his health. He's done being called a quitter by people who have never stepped inside a cage. And he's done letting Dana White control the narrative of his legacy. If you found this breakdown valuable, go ahead and click on any of the cards on your screen for more.